When the galaxy's supreme hunters first turned their gaze toward Earth, they believed they had found another quiet world filled with easy prey. For centuries, these hunters had ruled the stars. Their ships moved through space like shadows, and every planet they conquered became another mark of their dominance. They had faced countless species before, and not one had ever fought back with any real power. So when their long-range scanners picked up the signal of a small blue world orbiting a yellow sun, they saw it as nothing more than another trophy waiting to be claimed. To them, humans were just a small life form trapped on a fragile planet, unable to leave their own sky. The hunters studied human transmissions and laughed. They saw old satellites, messy communication networks, pictures of people fighting among themselves. To the hunters, it all looked weak. A planet that couldn't even agree with itself, they thought, could never resist an invasion. They didn't know how wrong they were. While the hunters prepared their attack fleets far away on Earth, life went on as usual. People went to work, drove their cars, argued about politics, watched the news, and complained about the weather. The idea of an alien attack was something they only imagined in movies or books. Yet somewhere deep in space, hundreds of ships were already moving toward them, cutting through the void in perfect silence. The first signs of something strange came quietly. Astronomers in observatories noticed unusual energy readings, small but rhythmic pulses too structured to be natural. At first, they thought it might be a new kind of cosmic event or maybe a satellite malfunction. But when the signals grew stronger and started repeating, fear began to spread. Someone or something was coming closer. Governments were alerted, military satellites repositioned, and secret defense councils held emergency meetings. The world's leaders tried to stay calm, but the truth soon became impossible to hide. The objects weren't asteroids, they weren't comets, and they weren't human. They were moving in formation, slowing down, changing direction, intelligent control. The announcement reached the public faster than the authorities expected. News channels flashed breaking stories, social media filled with wild theories, and within hours the whole planet was talking about one thing. Something from space was heading straight for Earth. People reacted in different ways. Some prayed, some panicked, some refused to believe it. Others gathered their families, stocked food, and watched the skies every night. But deep down, everyone felt the same chill. If they were advanced enough to cross the stars, what could humanity possibly do to stop them? As the alien fleet came closer, strange interference began to disrupt Earth's systems. Communications flickered, satellites lost contact, and power grids faced mysterious failures. Scientists realized the visitors were scanning every corner of the planet. They were mapping cities, oceans, and military bases with precision. And then, without a single word or warning, the skies lit up. At first, it looked like a meteor shower, bright streaks of light falling from space, but within seconds, explosions tore through the upper atmosphere. Defense satellites blinked out one by one. Space stations went dark. Every radar screen showed hundreds of unknown contacts entering Earth's orbit. The invasion had begun, but humanity didn't surrender. Not immediately. Panic filled the streets, yes, but so did determination. Military forces across continents came alive. Command centers that had been silent for decades were suddenly filled with voices, commands, and orders. For the first time in living memory, rival nations stopped arguing. Their leaders, once enemies, were now speaking on secure channels, sharing data, and uniting under one goal: survival. The first attacks hit major cities. Power lines snapped, skies turned orange with fire, and communication networks fell apart. But something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing, people started organizing themselves. Rescue teams moved even before orders came. Civilians helped soldiers. Scientists worked side by side with engineers, and old rivalries disappeared overnight. No one had planned for it, yet somehow everyone knew what to do. Humanity had been preparing for disaster for as long as it had existed. Floods, wars, pandemics, earthquakes. Every generation had faced something that threatened to wipe them out. Those same instincts came alive now. Even as alien ships hovered above the atmosphere, small groups of humans managed to launch counterattacks. Old missile systems were reactivated. Fighter jets took off from hidden bases, and stealth submarines began tracking alien movements. Every human weapon seemed primitive compared to what the invaders had, yet the will to fight made up for the difference. Some alien landing parties reached the surface, expecting quick victories. But on the ground, things didn't go as they planned. The invaders' armor and machines were powerful, yet they couldn't predict human unpredictability. Soldiers and civilians fought using whatever they had: traps, improvised explosives, even construction machines. It wasn't about winning at that point. It was about refusing to die quietly. Across the world, hidden research teams began studying pieces of alien technology left behind after the first skirmishes. Engineers risked their lives to retrieve damaged drones and crashed pods. Scientists stayed awake for days trying to understand how the invaders' energy weapons worked. Slowly, patterns began to appear. The aliens used a type of crystal energy that responded to pressure and sound. That discovery became humanity's first real clue on how to fight back. Meanwhile, the alien commanders grew frustrated. Their fleet had never faced resistance like this. Every other world they conquered had fallen within days, yet Earth kept resisting. Instead of fear, they found stubbornness. Instead of surrender, they met anger. And behind that anger was something the aliens had never encountered before: a unity that came not from orders, but from choice. As the days passed, humans began adapting faster. Portable shields were improvised using scavenged energy cores. Fighter jets were modified with captured alien thrusters. Even communication systems were redesigned to avoid alien jamming. What took the invaders centuries to perfect, humans copied in weeks. The aliens watched from orbit, studying this strange species. Their reports were filled with confusion. How could such a young civilization, barely able to travel beyond its own moon, react with such speed? One alien commander even questioned if the humans were truly primitive, or if they had been underestimated from the start. Back on Earth, the world changed overnight. Cities once divided by borders now worked as one. Scientists from every language and culture collaborated through underground networks. Humanity had discovered something it had almost forgotten: unity in the face of danger. For the first time in history, the people of Earth weren't fighting each other. They were fighting for each other. The invaders didn't understand that part. They had studied Earth's weapons, its technology, its resources, but they hadn't studied its spirit. They had no word for the kind of will that burns brighter under pressure. To them, survival was instinct. To humans, it was purpose. Even when hope seemed lost, the stories of bravery spread across the planet. Pilots flying into impossible odds, rescue teams saving lives under fire, scientists refusing to leave their labs. These stories lit a spark in every corner of the world. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. The hunters thought they were facing prey. What they didn't see was that humanity had been hunted by its own nature since the beginning of time, and it had never gone extinct. By the time the aliens realized how dangerous their mistake was, it was already too late. Earth had changed forever. Deep underground, new plans were being drawn. A global command was taking shape, uniting soldiers, scientists, and leaders. They had one mission: to push back, to learn, to fight smarter. Every loss became a lesson. Every battle a step closer to understanding the enemy. The hunters didn't know it yet, but their invasion had awakened something powerful. Humanity had stopped being afraid. From the cities in flames to the silent deserts and frozen mountains, the world whispered one message into the night: you came to hunt us, but now we have seen you, and we will never forget. The blue planet that once looked weak had become something else entirely, and as the first captured alien craft was brought into a hidden research base, surrounded by engineers and guarded by soldiers who refused to give up, a new era quietly began. Humanity was wounded, yes, but not broken. The hunters had arrived expecting an easy victory. What they found instead was a species that refused to bow, a planet that refused to die, and a truth they would never forget: attacking Earth was their greatest mistake. The first strike from the alien invaders was meant to break humanity in one blow. They believed fear would do the work for them, that humans would fall apart once their cities burned and their skies filled with strange lights. But what they didn't understand was that fear doesn't always destroy. It can also unite. When the first wave of attacks hit, the world seemed to stop breathing. People looked up and saw burning lines crossing the night sky, explosions lighting up the horizon, and strange shapes moving high above the clouds. There were no warnings, no demands, no attempt to communicate. The aliens came like a storm, fast, loud, and merciless. But amid the chaos, something powerful began to happen. Humans refused to run forever. The instinct to protect kicked in stronger than fear itself. In every corner of the world, people made choices that would decide the future of the planet. Soldiers rushed to their stations, engineers worked to restore lost power grids, and ordinary citizens turned their homes into shelters. Everyone wanted to help, no matter how small the action seemed. The alien ships targeted military bases first, thinking they could destroy Earth's ability to fight. But humans had built hidden facilities for years, tucked away deep underground or beneath mountains. These secret places now became the command centers for the planet's defense. Inside those bunkers, screens glowed with maps, radar signals, and coded transmissions. For the first time in human history, every nation shared their information freely. Old rivalries disappeared. They didn't care about borders anymore, only survival. The aliens underestimated how quickly humans could adapt. When one satellite system was destroyed, technicians created backup networks using whatever they had left. When communication lines failed, people used radio signals, paper maps, even hand-delivered messages. Every time something broke, humans found another way. In the first 48 hours, the losses were terrible. Many cities went dark and millions of people were displaced. But even in that darkness, the fire of resistance burned. Fighter jets that had once been used for training were launched into combat. Ground troops moved silently through destroyed streets, setting up ambush points. The invaders' technology was far beyond anything humans had seen. Their machines hovered without noise, and their weapons glowed with strange blue light. But technology alone couldn't win a war against a species that refused to stop fighting. One of the first counterattacks began when a group of engineers found a way to overload power grids to blind alien sensors. They turned entire cities into traps of electromagnetic chaos, confusing the invaders' targeting systems. It wasn't perfect, but it gave Earth's defenses precious time to regroup. Meanwhile, scientists continued working on captured alien debris. They discovered fragments of strange metal that reacted to heat and sound in unpredictable ways. Even small samples held incredible amounts of energy. It was the kind of discovery that could change everything, but they had no time to test carefully. Every hour mattered. In a hidden laboratory beneath a mountain, researchers managed to build a crude energy weapon using parts from destroyed alien drones. When they tested it, the beam cut through metal like paper. It was unstable, dangerous, and barely controlled, but it worked. The next day, that weapon was mounted on a modified aircraft, and it became humanity's first successful strike against an alien ship. For the first time since the invasion began, an alien craft fell from the sky in flames. That moment changed everything. Around the world, people saw the news. The image of that burning alien vessel crashing into the sea spread faster than any words could. It was proof. Proof that the invaders could bleed, proof that humanity wasn't helpless. The fear that had gripped the world began to fade, replaced by something new: belief. The aliens, who had once seen humans as insignificant, began to study this new reaction with confusion. They didn't understand how a species that had lost so much could still fight with such determination. On other worlds they conquered. Resistance usually ended after the first wave. But Earth was different. Every human defeat seemed to make them more dangerous. They had expected panic. What they found was strategy. They had expected surrender. What they found was defiance. As the battles continued, the aliens noticed something even more alarming. Humans were learning. Every time a weapon was fired against them, humans found a way to adapt. Every captured drone became a classroom. Every destroyed ship a lesson. In just a few days, humans went from terrified survivors to organized defenders. Across the oceans, naval fleets worked together, protecting vital communication lines. On land, armored divisions fought side by side, no matter their flag. In space, human satellites, once used for weather and television, were turned into improvised defense systems. Every piece of old technology was given a new purpose. The aliens began to feel the first signs of frustration. They increased the intensity of their attacks, but that only pushed humans to respond harder. When the skies filled with enemy fire, people found safety underground. When the ground shook, they built bunkers. When everything seemed lost, they refused to give up. The turning point came when humanity managed to bring down a large alien warship using a coordinated attack. It wasn't done by advanced weapons, it was done by clever thinking. Engineers redirected a series of high-powered energy grids, creating a massive surge that overloaded the ship's shields. Fighter jets moved in quickly, striking the exposed vessel. The explosion lit up the night sky, and for the first time, the hunters saw that their prey could strike back. From that moment, Earth wasn't just defending itself anymore, it was fighting back. Inside the alien fleet, confusion spread. Reports came in of missing landing teams, destroyed bases, and human counterattacks appearing from unexpected locations. Their commanders tried to analyze human behavior, but it made no sense to them. Humans didn't follow predictable patterns. They acted out of instinct, emotion, and something else, something the aliens couldn't calculate. It was willpower. Even when logic said they should run, humans kept fighting. Even when weapons failed, they improvised. Even when hope seemed gone, they found it again in each other. On the ground, humanity's spirit was unbreakable. Civilians formed networks to help soldiers and share information. Families gave up their homes to shelter others. Farmers delivered food to defense posts. Everywhere, people stood together. The aliens had hoped to divide humanity through fear, but their attack had done the opposite. It united them like never before. The invaders, still orbiting above, began to reassess their situation. For the first time, they realized this might not be another simple conquest. The humans had shown a trait no species had ever displayed before, a refusal to accept fate, and humanity was only getting started. As weeks passed, the scientists finally made a breakthrough. By studying the alien energy source, they discovered how to power human machines with it. Small test reactors started producing more power than anything Earth had ever built. These discoveries spread quickly among defense centers, and new weapons were designed in record time. In one underground hangar, a team of engineers completed the world's first hybrid ship, a mix of alien technology and human design. It wasn't large, but it was fast, powerful, and adaptable. When it launched into the sky, the world watched in silence. It rose like a symbol of hope, cutting through the clouds. That ship would later become known as the moment the war truly changed direction. For the first time, humanity wasn't reacting. They were taking control. The aliens, watching from their command ship, couldn't understand how a species so primitive had evolved so fast. They had studied human biology and found them fragile. They had studied human technology and found it outdated. But they had never studied the one thing that made humans dangerous: their hearts. Humans didn't fight because they wanted power or conquest. They fought because they loved their planet, their families, their home. They fought for each other, for the right to exist. That was something no invader could ever understand. And as the new human warship disappeared into the black sky, ready to face the enemy that had once looked unstoppable, the message was clear. Humanity wasn't just defending anymore, they were coming for their attackers. The hunters had made their move, but the hunt had only just begun. The world had changed. The cities were scarred. The sky was filled with strange lights, and the oceans carried the wrecks of both alien and human machines. Yet beneath all that destruction, something powerful had awakened. Humanity was no longer afraid. They were angry, determined, and more united than ever before. The alien invasion that was meant to crush them had instead forced them to evolve faster than anyone thought possible. In the ruins of the first battles, scientists worked day and night, studying every piece of alien technology they could find. Small fragments of metal, pieces of broken drones, and the remains of crashed ships. All of it became clues to something greater. The world's brightest minds sat in underground labs surrounded by glowing alien cores and strange machinery, trying to understand how it all worked. At first, it felt impossible. The technology was beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The power sources didn't behave like any fuel or energy they knew. The materials used in alien ships could bend light and resist heat beyond imagination. But the more they studied, the more they began to understand one truth. The aliens weren't gods. Their machines followed logic. Their weapons had limits. Their power could be learned, copied, and even improved. Every day brought a new discovery. Engineers built small prototypes, testing what could be done with captured energy cells. Scientists learned how to link human computer systems with alien processors, making them faster and smarter. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And with each success, hope grew stronger. Deep beneath the mountains, hidden from the alien eyes above, a massive project began to take shape. Using the remains of a downed alien vessel, humans decided to rebuild it. Not as a symbol of defeat, but as a weapon of survival. Thousands of people worked together on it. Engineers welded, programmers rewrote alien codes, and soldiers stood guard around the clock. The ship was unlike anything Earth had ever created. It was both alien and human, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the edge. They called it the first of a new kind. It wasn't built to flee. It was built to fight. When the ship was finally powered on for the first time, the entire underground base shook with the sound of its engines. Blue light poured from its core, humming with energy that no one fully understood. People stood in silence as the readings came in. Stable, strong, ready. The first human-alien hybrid warship had come to life. Outside, the world was still in chaos, but word about the project spread quietly. Across the surviving cities, people whispered about the ship that would turn the tide. It gave them something they hadn't felt in months: pride. As the ship rose from its underground cradle for the first time, breaking through layers of dust and stone, people came out of hiding to watch. It pierced through the clouds, leaving a glowing trail behind it. To those who saw it, it wasn't just a machine. It was a promise that humanity would no longer kneel. While the ship soared into the sky, messages spread through secret communication lines. The world's leaders sent one united broadcast into space. It was short, calm, and clear. "You came to hunt us. Now we hunt you." Those words echoed through the stars. In the alien fleet's command ship, the reaction was confusion mixed with disbelief. For centuries, the hunters had conquered hundreds of worlds without ever being challenged. Every species they encountered had fallen within days. Yet now, this small blue planet, this so-called primitive race, had destroyed several of their ships and sent a message of defiance. Their commanders tried to understand it. How could such a fragile world be fighting back with such strength? They began studying human behavior more closely. What they found only made them uneasy. Humans were unpredictable. They were emotional. They took risks that made no sense. They laughed in the face of danger. And when cornered, they didn't beg. They fought harder. Across Earth, resistance continued to grow. New outposts were formed. Teams were sent to recover more alien wreckage. Every discovery brought humanity one step closer to matching their enemy's power. Scientists began developing smaller energy reactors based on alien tech, and soon they had portable shields and new weapons that could rival what the aliens used. In one corner of the world, workers repaired old factories to produce machines faster. In another, pilots trained using simulators that replicated alien flight patterns. It was no longer about defense, it was about preparation. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were getting ready to strike back. Meanwhile, the aliens watched Earth from orbit, unsure of what to do next. They had underestimated this species, and now their invasion was starting to fall apart. Their supply lines were stretched. Their ships were being damaged faster than they could repair them. And morale was beginning to crumble. One report from a field commander described the humans in a single sentence: "They adapt too fast." That was the truth. Every time the aliens changed tactics, the humans changed faster. When energy weapons became too strong, humans built reflective barriers. When communications were jammed, they created silent relay systems using old radio waves. The aliens relied on their technology. The humans relied on creativity. In one daring mission, human forces managed to capture an intact alien power core. It was transported secretly across half the world under heavy protection. When it reached the hidden laboratory, scientists spent days trying to stabilize it. The energy readings were unstable, but if they could harness it, it could power entire fleets. After endless trials and sleepless nights, they succeeded. The first stable hybrid reactor was born, combining alien energy with human design. With it, ships could travel faster, weapons could strike harder, and shields could hold longer. Humanity had finally caught up. As more hybrid ships were built, the humans formed the beginnings of a new fleet. It was small, barely a dozen vessels, but each one carried the strength of Earth's defiance. These ships were not designed for running, they were made to chase. When the fleet launched for the first time, the people of Earth gathered to watch. From ruined cities to quiet valleys, everyone looked to the sky. They saw streaks of light rising upward, glowing brighter with every second. It wasn't fear they felt anymore. It was pride, the kind that comes when you know you've earned your place in the universe. Above the atmosphere, the human ships moved with surprising grace. Their alien cores made them faster than anything Earth had ever created. They locked onto the nearest alien cruiser, not to defend but to attack. When the first shot was fired, it wasn't from the aliens. It was from Earth. The beam of blue energy cut through the void and struck the alien ship head-on. The explosion lit up the sky so bright it could be seen from the ground. For the first time, humanity had taken the fight beyond their planet. The message spread across the galaxy faster than light. Other civilizations that had once feared the hunters began watching the transmissions. They saw a small world rise from the ashes, stand against the unbeatable, and fight without mercy or fear. The galaxy began to whisper the same words. The humans are fighting back. Inside the alien command fleet, panic spread quietly. Their leaders argued, their strategies began to collapse. They had planned for every kind of enemy except this one. The humans were different. Their technology may have been young, but their courage was ancient. Their instincts had been shaped by millions of years of survival. Down on Earth, people didn't know the full scale of what they had achieved yet. They still faced danger every day. They still mourned those they had lost. But they also knew that something had changed forever. Humanity had crossed a line that could never be reversed. They were no longer a species waiting to be saved. They had become the saviors of themselves. As the first human fleet disappeared into the stars, chasing the enemy that had once thought itself supreme, one truth became clear. The hunters had made a mistake they could never undo. They had awakened something fierce and unbreakable. They had come to Earth expecting prey. What they found instead was a predator that had been hiding in plain sight all along. And as the stars reflected off the surface of the new warship, humanity's story was no longer one of survival. It was the beginning of dominance. The galaxy would never look at the blue planet the same way again. Word about Earth's fight spread faster than light through the galactic networks. Across distant worlds, alien races who once lived in fear of the hunters stopped what they were doing to watch. No one had ever seen anything like it before. A world that should have been wiped out standing tall against the galaxy's strongest predators. For countless centuries, the hunters had ruled every corner of known space. They were considered unbeatable, unstoppable, untouchable. When they arrived at a new planet, the story always ended the same way. The invaders would destroy the defenses, enslave the survivors, and move on without looking back. But Earth had broken that pattern. The unthinkable had happened. The hunters were losing. From small colonies to massive space stations, news spread like a wildfire. Some species whispered the story in disbelief. Others cried with joy. And a few, who had once been enslaved by the hunters, secretly prayed that this strange blue world would succeed. Inside the Galactic Council, a place where the leaders of many advanced civilizations gathered, the reports about Earth caused chaos. No one could believe that a primitive planet could destroy hunter warships. Many dismissed it at first, calling it a mistake in data, but the evidence kept coming. Clear images of human ships fighting in orbit, recordings of alien fleets retreating, and messages showing Earth's hybrid technology. The council members sat in silence, realizing that everything they thought they knew about power in the galaxy was about to change. On Earth, the humans didn't care what the rest of the galaxy thought. They were too busy surviving and fighting. Their new hybrid fleet had started taking the battle beyond the planet's atmosphere. What had once been a desperate defense had turned into an organized counterattack. The first targets were small outposts in near orbit, places the hunters used to coordinate their fleets. Human pilots, still learning to control their new ships, launched raids that destroyed those outposts one after another. The invaders who had once looked down on humanity now found themselves hunted. Every victory lifted the world's spirit a little higher. People gathered in streets and shelters to watch the glowing trails of human ships rise into the night. The fear that had filled the world just weeks ago was now turning into pride. The planet that had once been called weak was now known across the stars as the one that fought back. In the alien command centers, confusion grew with every passing hour. Their leaders argued, unable to understand how a species with such limited technology could adapt so fast. They studied human strategies and found no clear pattern. Every time the hunters adjusted, humans changed tactics. Every time the invaders built stronger defenses, humanity found a weakness. The hunters began to feel something they hadn't felt in ages: doubt. The most feared species in the galaxy was beginning to panic. On Earth, human scientists continued to push the limits of their discoveries. They were no longer just copying alien technology. They were improving it. The hybrid reactors became more stable. The energy cores lasted longer. Human creativity filled the gaps where alien logic had stopped. Every experiment made their machines stronger. Every new design made their ships faster. But it wasn't just about machines. It was about the people behind them. Pilots who had lost everything still volunteered for missions. Engineers who barely slept worked through the night to fix damaged systems. Medics and rescuers moved from one battlefield to another, saving lives even when they were exhausted. Everyone gave something. The human leaders decided that the time had come to send a message not just to the invaders, but to the entire galaxy. Through a secret communication system, they broadcasted an open transmission to anyone listening. The message was short, calm, and full of quiet strength. This is Earth. We will not kneel. We will not hide. And to those who believe the hunters cannot be stopped, watch us. That message reached worlds that had lived in silence for centuries. Some people cried, some smiled, and some began to hope again. Back in the alien capital, the Hunter Council held an emergency meeting. Reports were flooding in from every sector. Losses, destroyed fleets, missing ships. Their arrogance was breaking. The same species they had once called prey was now chasing them across the stars. They ordered their most powerful war fleet to prepare for battle. The Hunters were determined to remind the galaxy who ruled it. When the new alien armada entered Earth's system, they came prepared for a final showdown. Thousands of ships surrounded the planet like a dark storm, but this time humanity was ready. The hybrid fleet rose from Earth like a wave of light. There weren't as many human ships, but each one carried something the Hunters didn't have: purpose. The battle began in the silent vacuum of space far above the clouds. Blue and white lights danced between the stars as energy beams crossed the void. From the ground, people watched with tears in their eyes. They couldn't hear the battle, but they could see it. Small flashes of light marking every strike, every victory, every sacrifice. The world waited, holding its breath. At first, it seemed the Hunters had the upper hand. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their firepower shook even the strongest shields. But humanity didn't give up. They fought smart. They moved fast. They used every trick they had learned. In one bold move, a group of human ships lured the enemy fleet into the planet's shadow, cutting off their main energy link. At that moment, Earth's defense grid, powered by the new hybrid reactors, activated at full strength. Beams of pure energy shot upward, striking the alien ships from below. It was a sight the galaxy would never forget. One by one, the invaders' ships began to fall apart. Their systems failed. Their shields collapsed. The once invincible armada that had terrified worlds for generations was now crumbling in front of a single planet. When the battle ended, silence filled the skies. The remaining alien ships fled into the dark, leaving behind wreckage and fire. Humanity had won, not just a fight, but a place in the stars. The Galactic Council received the final report with disbelief. The Hunters, the same ones who had ruled for centuries, had been defeated by the very species they had tried to destroy. The balance of power across the galaxy had changed forever. Some worlds began to send messages to Earth, expressing their respect and gratitude. Others simply watched in awe. No one dared to threaten the blue planet again. Even the mention of Earth became a warning among the stars. Back home, people wept for those who had fallen. The price of victory had been heavy, but it had meaning. The survivors rebuilt their homes, planted new crops, and looked at the sky with new eyes. The stars no longer looked distant and unreachable. They looked like the next step. In the years that followed, stories of the war were told everywhere. Children grew up hearing how humanity had faced the impossible and won. Artists painted the battles, musicians wrote songs about courage, and historians called it the day Earth awakened. For the rest of the galaxy, it was the moment they realized something important. Strength doesn't come from technology or power. It comes from will. The Hunters had learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and in their silence they understood that Earth's victory wasn't luck. It was destiny. The planet they had once mocked, the people they had once dismissed, had changed the course of history. Humanity had proven something the universe had forgotten. When pushed to the edge, they don't break, they rise. From that day forward, whenever a ship passed near Earth, travelers would whisper the same words: "Do not provoke them." The galaxy had seen many empires rise and fall, but now it had witnessed the birth of something new. Humanity was no longer just another world in the darkness. They were the reminder that even the smallest spark could light up an entire universe. And as Earth's rebuilt ships sailed among the stars, carrying their message of strength and survival, the once proud hunters kept their distance. They had called themselves supreme, unstoppable, eternal, but they had met something stronger. A species that refused to die, a planet that refused to bow. The galaxy would never forget the day the hunters came to Earth, because from that day on the hunters were never the same. The smoke of victory had barely cleared when humanity realized the war was not truly over. The hunters might have been pushed back, but they were not gone. Their surviving fleets had vanished into the edges of the galaxy, broken but not destroyed. Earth's leaders knew that silence from such an enemy was not peace, it was a warning. The world began to rebuild faster than ever. Cities that had turned to ashes started to rise again. The people, still haunted by memories of destruction, refused to be helpless ever again. Everywhere there was determination. People worked together, shared food, repaired homes, and comforted strangers. The war had made them understand what unity really meant. In secret, humanity prepared for what everyone feared, a second invasion. The scientists who had created the hybrid technology didn't stop their work. They went deeper, searching for ways to make ships faster, defenses stronger, and weapons more precise. Every test, every improvement was a small promise to the fallen. We won't let it happen again. But something unexpected began to happen. Across the galaxy, messages started arriving from other worlds. They were not threats, they were requests. Civilizations that had once been too afraid to speak now reached out to Earth asking for help. Some sent data about the hunters' movements. Others shared their own experiences of suffering under the hunters' rule. For the first time, different species who had never trusted each other were uniting, and Earth was at the center of it all. Humanity didn't know how to respond at first. They had never seen themselves as leaders or heroes. They were survivors. But the more messages they received, the clearer it became. The galaxy had been waiting for someone to stand up to the hunters. Earth had done what no one else dared to do, and now everyone looked to them for guidance. So instead of building an empire, humanity built alliances. They opened communication with planets that had once been isolated. They shared what they had learned about the hunters' weaknesses. They even began sending small teams of engineers and medics to help rebuild those distant worlds. For many alien races, seeing humans arrive in peace was shocking. They had heard stories of humans as fierce warriors, as destroyers of the hunters. But when they met them face to face, they saw something else: kindness. Humanity didn't come with pride or arrogance. They came with open hands and quiet determination. They helped without asking for anything in return. They listened to the stories of those who had lost everything, and they promised that the age of fear was ending. This new chapter in the galaxy's history came to be known as the Rising of the Blue World. It wasn't about power, it was about change, but deep in the darkness, far from the light of any star, the hunters were not idle. Their pride had been shattered, and their empire was crumbling. Inside their strongholds, their leaders fought among themselves. Some wanted revenge, others wanted to hide, and a few whispered that humanity had become too dangerous to challenge. The strongest of them, the old master of the hunter clans, refused to accept defeat. He declared that the hunters would return, not just to conquer Earth, but to erase its name from memory. He believed that if the galaxy saw the blue planet burn, no one would dare to rise again. They began gathering what remained of their fleets. Factories hidden in forgotten moons came back to life. The sound of engines echoed through the void as the hunters prepared for their revenge. Back on Earth, people sensed the coming storm. They had seen this pattern before, the silence before the strike. The leaders called for readiness, and once again the planet came together. This time, though, there was no fear. There was resolve. Humanity had changed. They had allies now. Planets that had once bowed to the hunters now stood beside Earth. The galaxy that had once been divided by fear was learning to trust again. The first sign of the hunters' return came from the outer colonies. A listening station caught strange signals, encrypted pulses that matched hunter technology. When the data reached Earth, the response was calm but firm. They were ready. The hybrid fleet had grown into something far greater than before. Ships of every shape and color from every allied race joined the human armada. Together, they formed the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. In orbit above Earth, thousands of ships lined up like stars forming new constellations. Pilots looked out from their cockpits knowing that this battle would decide everything. Some were human, others were alien, but in that moment they shared one heart. The hunters struck without warning. Their ships tore through the void, dark and silent, moving like shadows. The first clash happened near a gas giant, where a small scouting team was stationed. The hunters overwhelmed them quickly, but this time their victory was short. Before they could celebrate, Earth's main fleet arrived. The sky lit up with energy bursts as ships clashed across the system. The hunters had expected chaos, but what they found was order. Humanity had learned how to fight them, how to anticipate their moves, and how to use their own technology against them. The battle raged for hours, maybe days. It was hard to tell in the endless dark. But something remarkable happened. As human and alien ships fought side by side, they began to move like one living organism. Every formation, every maneuver was perfectly timed. The hunters realized too late that they were facing not one world, but many united. Their tactics failed. Their confidence vanished. A final push came when Earth's largest ship, powered by the hybrid core, broke through the center of the hunter fleet. Its energy beam tore through their command vessel, cutting it in half. The shockwave rippled through space, scattering debris and silence. When the battle ended, the hunters were gone. Not defeated this time, finished. The survivors drifted away, their empire shattered beyond repair. The galaxy was free. In the following weeks, as peace settled in, humanity stood before the council once more. This time they were not the frightened newcomers. They were equals. Leaders of worlds that had once feared the hunters now bowed in respect. A representative of an old alien race spoke first. "Earth," he said, "you have changed everything. You have shown us that courage can exist even in the smallest world." The human envoy simply nodded and replied, "We only did what we had to do." There was no boasting, no pride, only quiet strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout. Back on Earth, people began to rebuild again, but this time the rebuilding was peaceful. They turned battle stations into research centers, and old warships became exploration vessels. Children played in open fields where bunkers had once been. The sky was clear again, and at night the stars no longer felt like a threat, they felt like home. In time, humans began traveling freely among the stars. They visited the worlds they had once only seen in dreams. They helped restore life to planets that had been left in ruins by the hunters. Everywhere they went, they were greeted not as conquerors but as protectors. The galaxy slowly began to heal. Trade returned. Communication grew. The fear that had once ruled every corner of space was replaced with cooperation. And yet, even in peace, humanity never forgot. They built monuments for those who had fallen, not just on Earth but on every world that had joined the fight. On each monument were carved simple words: "We stood together and we survived." Generations later, children listened to the stories of that time. They learned how a small blue planet had challenged the strongest hunters in the galaxy, and won. They learned that power is not about domination, but about standing for what's right. The hunters became a warning from history, a reminder of what arrogance can destroy. And humanity became a symbol of hope. Somewhere out in the stars, new travelers would one day find the remains of that great battle. Broken ships drifting in silence, still glowing faintly after years of emptiness. And when they asked what happened there, the story would be told again. How the galaxy's supreme hunters were challenged by a species that refused to surrender, and how that species, humans, didn't just survive. They inspired a universe. The galaxy was quiet again. For the first time in living memory, there were no cries for help, no fleets racing toward battle, and no shadows of fear drifting between the stars. The hunters were gone, their empire reduced to ruins scattered across the dark. But even though the war had ended, something much greater had begun. On Earth, people were learning how to live without fear. The sky that once burned with fire was now calm and bright. Cities that had been turned to ash were alive again, glowing with new lights. People walked freely, children played in the open, and laughter replaced the sirens that once filled the air. Humanity had fought harder than anyone believed possible. And now they were learning to rebuild, not just their world, but themselves. In the heart of what used to be the Global Command Center, a new council was formed. But this time it wasn't made of generals or politicians. It was made of builders, scientists, teachers, and ordinary people who had lived through the worst and still chosen hope. They met every day to talk not about war, but about how to heal, how to grow, and how to share what they had learned with the rest of the galaxy. They knew that the victory wasn't just about destroying the hunters. It was about changing the way the galaxy thought about strength. For generations, power had meant control. The hunters ruled through fear, and most species obeyed because they believed resistance was impossible. But Earth had proved that courage could break even the strongest chains. When the Galactic Council reopened its chambers, representatives from hundreds of worlds attended. Many of them had once been afraid to speak. Now they stood proudly, side by side with the humans who had freed them. The first meeting began in silence. Then, one by one, the delegates started to tell their stories, of how their people had suffered, how they had hidden, and how the sight of Earth's stand had given them hope. A tall representative from a distant desert planet spoke slowly. "When we heard that Earth fought back," he said, "we thought it was a lie. No one had ever defeated the hunters. But when we saw the transmission of their broken fleet, we cried. For the first time in centuries, we cried because we knew we were not alone anymore." Those words stayed in everyone's hearts. Humanity didn't respond with pride. They only listened quietly, humbled by the realization that their struggle had given meaning far beyond their own world. Soon, the Council made a historic decision. They declared that no world should ever face destruction alone again. A network of cooperation was formed. Scientific exchanges, cultural connections, and defense pacts, all built not on fear, but on trust. Earth was chosen as the symbolic heart of this new era. Its story had become a reminder that strength came from unity, not domination. From every corner of the galaxy, ships arrived at Earth's orbit bringing knowledge, music, art, and hope. The skies that had once seen warships now shimmered with peaceful visitors. For many humans, seeing alien visitors walking the streets of Earth felt like living in a dream. Markets were filled with foods from other worlds. Students studied alien languages. Artists painted new skies with stars they had never seen before. Humanity had become explorers again, not of territory but of understanding. In one of the rebuilt cities, a great monument was raised. It stood tall above the horizon, made of stone and metal taken from both Earth and the wreckage of hunter ships. On it were carved words that were translated into every known language. For those who stood when all others bowed, and for those who rose when all seemed lost. People from every world visited that monument. Some came to honor the fallen. Others came just to stand in silence, to feel the weight of what had been won and what it had cost. The hunters themselves became a story told in classrooms, not as monsters, but as a warning. Teachers explained that the true danger of the hunters was not their weapons, but their belief that they could never be challenged. That belief had blinded them. In the end, it was their arrogance that destroyed them, not just human firepower. Years passed and the galaxy changed. Travel between worlds became common. Trade flourished. Scientists worked together to solve problems that had once seemed impossible: disease, hunger, and isolation. Every species brought something unique, and together they built something greater than any one world could have imagined. Humanity, though respected, never acted as rulers. They kept their role simple: to protect peace when needed and to guide when asked. They didn't seek thrones or crowns. They sought balance, but even in peace they stayed ready. The hybrid ships that had once been weapons of war were kept, not as symbols of fear, but as guardians of peace. They patrolled the outer systems, ensuring that no new threat could rise unnoticed. To many, they became known as the Silent Watchers, a fleet that never attacked first, but always stood ready to defend. Among the stars, a new generation was growing. Children born after the war who had never seen destruction, only the stories of how close the galaxy had come to losing itself. These children didn't learn to fear the unknown. They were taught to explore it. Some dreamed of traveling to the farthest edge of space. Others wanted to rebuild the old hunter worlds, turning places of darkness into homes of light. Humanity encouraged them all. After all, they had once been told that space was a place to fear, and now it was their future. Still, deep within the hearts of the older generations, memories of the war remained. Sometimes when the night was quiet, they looked up at the stars and remembered the burning skies, the sound of alarms, and the faces of those who didn't return. But they also remembered something else, the feeling of standing together, of refusing to give up when everything seemed lost. That memory became their greatest treasure. As the years turned into decades, the galaxy entered what historians later called the Age of Renewal. It was an age where peace wasn't just the absence of war, it was the presence of connection. Worlds that had once ignored each other became partners. Species that had once been enemies became friends. And at the center of it all, Earth continued to shine, not as a conqueror, but as a reminder. Its blue oceans and green lands became symbols of resilience. Visitors who came to Earth often said that the planet itself seemed alive, filled with energy, as if it remembered what it had endured and wanted to share that strength with everyone who came near. In one quiet corner of Earth, by the sea, an old human sat and watched the sunset. Around them, the sky was calm, painted with the same colors that had witnessed both destruction and peace. A group of young students stood nearby, listening to the old stories of how humanity once fought the hunters. When one of the students asked, "Why did they attack us?" the elder smiled softly and said, "Because they thought we were weak." The child frowned. "And were we?" The elders shook their head. "No, we were just quiet. But when the time came, we remembered who we are." The group fell silent as the waves rolled in. The stars began to appear one by one, shining brighter than ever before. Somewhere out there, humanity's ships still watched over the galaxy, not to control it, but to keep it safe. Generations later, when new travelers from distant galaxies arrived and asked about the old war, the story was told again, not with anger, but with pride. It became a legend, not about victory, but about awakening. The legend said that once a small world called Earth faced the greatest hunters the galaxy had ever known. The hunters believed they could never be defeated. They saw humanity as prey, but they were wrong. Because when they came for Earth, they didn't find prey. They found something they didn't understand. Hearts that refused to break, courage that refused to die, and a unity that could turn weakness into strength. The story ended with the same words every time, spoken softly but with meaning that echoed across the stars. Attacking Earth was a mistake. The hunters learned that too late, because when you challenge humanity, you challenge the very spirit of survival. And as the storytellers looked up at the sky, the stars seemed to shimmer in agreement, as if the universe itself remembered the day it changed forever. When the galaxy's supreme hunters were challenged, and humanity rose not as conquerors but as protectors of all life,